beforehand. At any rate, they said that the torch could have only been operated by a trained professional and believe it was almost certainly the work of a disgruntled union members. The city's assigned extra investigators to the case and is working with federal forensic experts to track down the vandals. Well, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tap Into the Truth. Let's get right back into it. Also, among the offbeat stories today that we're taking a peek at, the White House is in the rather embarrassing position of having to now officially respond to a new petition, as the petition has crossed that magical threshold. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. 25,000 signatures have made its way onto the petition to try Dianne Feinstein for treason. Now, of course, at this point, it's rather insignificant because the White House only has to say no, and that's a response. But it's worth mentioning briefly, just because it's kind of funny. The idea here is that their petition is calling for Dianne Feinstein to be tried in a federal court for treason. The petition basically claims that Feinstein's recent push for a renewed assault weapons ban makes her guilty of treason to the Constitution. That petition has, of course, received attention in the right-wing blog circles. It's been pushed on InfoWars, and that's a site that's run by prominent conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, who recently drew attention for firing off an explosive rant on CNN host Piers Morgan. Evidently, he was on Morgan's program last Monday night, and Jones himself had helped coordinate a highly successful White House petition to deport Morgan over his outspoken support for gun control measures. At any rate, basically, the petition states that Senator Dianne Feinstein has made it clear she does not believe in the Constitution or the inalienable rights of Americans to keep and bear firearms. She is actively working to destroy the Second Amendment with her 2013 assault weapons ban. For this reason, we, the people of the United States, petition for her to be tried in federal court for treason to the Constitution. I like Alex Jones. He's entertaining and he's intelligent. But I think everybody and their grandmother knows that if you put a petition like that up there, it's not going to matter how many signatures it gets. The occupier of the White House is going to simply respond by saying no. And speaking of saying no, we have a date for Hillary to finally go testify in front of Congress about Benghazi. The top Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee says that Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton will testify on the deadly September 11th assault in Libya on January 22nd. That's the day after the occupier's inauguration, and the first day that the Senate returns to Washington after a 2-week break. My Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee disclosed the date in an interview on MSNBC, and there was no official word from the committee. Clinton has been scheduled to testify last month, but of course fell ill and then suffered a concussion when she fell. And then, of course, she's just recently gotten out of the hospital over the blood clot that she received as a complication of the concussion. She did return to work this past Monday, and she's promised to appear before the Senate and the House Foreign Affairs panels before she steps down from the job. And, of course, Obama's already nominated Senator John Kerry to replace her. Question mark about that is, why bother the Senate's already released their report on Benghazi, for crying out loud. The House hasn't, so there might be something new and interesting there. But why are they even wasting their time going in front of the Senate when they've already finished their investigation? Because that's when you release your report. It's not like you can reasonably expect them to go back and edit the report. Are they going to do a new report? These folks won't even do a budget. Oh, by the way, also recently being reported, cash for clunkers hurts the environment. For those of you who have forgotten about the 2009 attempt to push more economic and environmental friendly vehicles onto the highways and get all those old jalopies off the road. Turns out, not only did it do what I predicted at the time, create a big price spike on used cars and push several used car dealers out of business, turns out it's done a lot of damage to the environment too. The 2009 Cash for Clunkers federal program was supposed to be a boon for the environment and the economy. During a limited time, consumers could trade in an old gas-guzzling car for up to $4,500 cash back towards the purchase of a fuel-efficient new car. Seemed like a win for everyone, right? The environment, the gasping auto industry, and the cash-strapped consumers as well. Though almost 1 million people poured into car dealerships eager to exchange their old jalopies for something shiny and new, recent reports indicate that the entire program may have actually hurt the environment far more than it helped. According to E! Magazine, the Clunkers program, which was officially known as the Car Allowance Rebate System, CARS for short, produced tons of unnecessary waste while doing little to curb greenhouse gas emissions. The program's first mistake seems to have been to focus on car shredding instead of recycling. With 690,000 vehicles traded in, that's a pretty big mistake. According to the Automotive Recyclers Association, automobiles are almost completely recyclable down to their engine oil and brake fluid. But many of the Cash for Clunkers cars were never sent to recycling facilities. The agency reports the cars' engines were instead destroyed by federal mandate in order to prevent dealers from illicitly reselling the vehicles later. The remaining parts of each car could then be put up for auction, but program guidelines also required that after 180 days, no matter how much of the car was left, the parts would be sent to a junkyard and shredded. Shredding vehicles results in its own environmental nightmare. For each ton of metal produced by shredding facilities, roughly 500 pounds of shredding residue is also produced, which includes polyurethane foams, metal oxides, glass, and dirt. All totaled, about 4.5 million tons of that residue is already produced on an average every year. Where does it go? Well, right to the landfills, ladies and gentlemen. According to E! Magazines, they state that recycling just the plastic and metal alone from the car scraps would have saved 24 million barrels of oil. While some of the clunkers were truly old, many of the almost 700,000 cars were still in perfectly good condition. In fact, many of the cars that qualified for the program were relatively young, with fuel efficiencies that rivaled the newer cars at the time. And although the point was to get less fuel-efficient cars off the roads, with only 690,000 traded in and over 250 million registered in the U.S., the difference in pollutant levels seems pretty negligible. But all that vehicular destruction did more than create unnecessary waste for the environment. It also had some far-reaching economic effects. According to a recent Tri-Cities op-ed written by Mike Smith of Ralph Smith Motors in Virginia, cars created a deficit of used cars. There were almost none. This artificially drove up the prices, and for those who needed an affordable car but couldn't qualify for the program, this increase in price meant affordable transportation was well out of reach. It also meant used car dealers, most of whom are independently owned small business owners, had little to no stock. According to Smith's piece, 122 Virginia dealers chose not to renew their licenses after the year. Now, we haven't even got to today's major topic, so we will have to have a part 2, so please be sure to tune in. But just in case you missed it, most of you haven't, wanted to also touch on this. Did anybody out there not hear that Obama and Boehner's exchange? John Boehner, in an interview with Stephen Moore of the Wall Street Journal, came out and opened up about the occupiers' utter unwillingness to cut a single dollar from federal spending. In a stunning omission, the occupier reportedly told Boehner, "We don't have a spending problem." Excuse me. The occupier continues to maintain that America's federal deficit is caused not by governmental overspending, but by a health care problem. Boehner said, "You want to blame the fiscal woes on health care, and they're only going to get worse under Obamacare, but we have a very serious spending problem." Obama eventually replied, "I'm getting tired of hearing you say that." So the occupier doesn't think there's a spending problem. Also on the topic of breakdowns within the government, the Indiana State Supreme Court ruled that people cannot resist illegal entry by police into their homes. Basically saying that people have no right to resist if police officers illegally enter your home. They used public policy and the Fourth Amendment as their excuses for doing so, but the ruling was 3-2, and the two really had a strong dissension, and they've vocalized that. Bottom line is, you probably shouldn't try to resist the police directly anyway. If they've made a mistake, then you're supposed to take that up in court. Bottom line is, the ruling may on its face be incorrect, but it's still common sense not to resist. If they're coming in, if it's not an emergency, if they don't have a warrant, if they don't have reason to believe certain set types of crimes are going on, then they're not supposed to come in. But it's still illegal for them to do so without grounds. Well, it's also illegal for you to try and resist them. It's just not smart. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign off here briefly, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to hit today's topic because there's a lot of material with it. Please come right back and listen in. We'll be right back.